Good morning. This is a webinar on bondage, the fourth stage of spiritual unfoldment based on the tarot cards. So the first column of the tarot tableau is called Bondage, and it is one of many arrangements of the 22 major arcana cards. At the top is the Fool. The remaining 21 cards are in 7 columns of 3 cards each. Each of the 3 rows represents an attribute. The top row contains 7 principles or dominant mental states. The second row represents agencies or activities. In the bottom row are the conditions or expressions of the principles of the upper row, manifesting through the agencies of the middle row. And there you have the tarot tableau. So we call these the 7 stages of spiritual unfoldment. Each column represents one of the levels, one of the stages. From the left to right, we have bondage, awakening, revelation, organization, regeneration, realization, and cosmic consciousness. Let's begin by looking at the first column, called Bondage. We will cover the remaining 6 columns in the future. The 3 keys involved in this first stage of unfoldment are the Magician, Strength, and the Deceiver, also known as the Devil on most cards, in most decks. They represent the Hebrew letters Beth, house, for the Magician, Teth, the coiled snake, for strength, Ayin, eye or outward appearance, for the Deceiver. Beth is also a double Hebrew letter meaning both life and death, and this is an important concept, which we'll get to near the end. The primary function of each of these keys is the Magician key is attention and concentration. The Strength key, regeneration through the agency or law of suggestion. The Deceiver key is mirth. Yes, mirth. It is a pretty wacky key, but that's the primary function of it. And we'll get to that. So, review the 3 keys. You may wish to revisit the webinars for each of these 3 keys. That review may prove to be helpful because I won't be going into the same depth of explanation here on the symbology and colors as I did on when I presented the individual cards. I would suggest that you first follow this webinar in Bondage, then go back to the individual keys and listen to those webinars. Then come back and watch this post once again. This will give you a more lasting impression of what is being expressed here. So, the Deceiver key, 15. So let's see how these 3 keys interact to bring us to the condition of the Deceiver and why the Deceiver is also known as the renewing intelligence. Key 15 is not contrary to cosmic law. The descent of the life power into this plane of name and form brings with it the experience of ignorance, fear, bondage, inversion, and they are all symbolized by the Deceiver. They are phases of death, which is attributed to the double letter Beth. St. Paul said, "To be carnally minded is death," which is precisely what the Deceiver represents. Remember from my webinar on Key 15, at any time the 2 characters may remove their chains. Objective consciousness is the principle represented by the Magician and who is in a state of imperfect, and the Deceiver key is in a state of it expresses this in a state of imperfect expression in key 15. Objective consciousness finds expression in the life of the senses. It classifies and arranges sense experience. It is the consciousness that reasons in due time, builds a house, which is Beth, of theory or generalization from the observation of many particulars. When the observations of particulars are faulty, generalizations are made from insufficient evidence. The result is invariably some limitation of the powers of mankind. As soon as these imperfect generalizations are accepted as being true, then the subjective mind receives them without any reservation. The subjective mind is constantly and uncritically amenable to suggestion. And of course, the feminine is the representation of the symbol of the subconscious or subjective mind. Our objective interpretations of experience are the most potent of all suggestions. Sovereignty and the serpent power. The subjective or subconscious mind at all times rules the functions of the bodies of mankind. Teth means snake, that's the letter of this card, as it refers to the coiled serpent power. So you see the little coiled snake in the lower right-hand corner of the card. So here we are dealing with sovereignty. She wears a crown of flowers, having to do with intelligent control of that aspect of the serpent power, the Kundalini. The subjective mind determines the structure of the finer vehicles as well as that of the physical body of man. When the patterns that the subjective mind works by are wrong, the operation of the law of suggestion as symbolized by strength produces the condition demonstrated by the deceiver. Our bondage is due to the fact that the cells of our bodies are filled with errors. An effective suggestion is indirect. A suggestion is a hint. This connotes subtlety. Subconsciousness more readily responds to what is implied than to what is explicitly affirmed, stated, or commanded. This is because subconscious reasoning is deductive. See the little logic circle on the right? It goes from general principles to specific instances. So it is deductive. And this tricks people because they think, I'll just demand perfection, and that doesn't work that way. You don't have to coerce subconsciousness. You do have to acquire the art of gently intimating what you want done. The responsibility for right direction rests on you, the self-conscious mind. If your deeds give the lie to your words, the suggestion that reaches and affects your inner consciousness is the suggestion of your action, not that of the statements you have learned from some book or teacher. This is so important. And this imperfect observation and inaccurate interpretation is not ours alone. So we're off the hook on some of this. Much of it is accumulated race memories or tribal memories. These are the chains that bind us. We attribute to the flesh the idea that physical conditions are the determining things in the human experience. You may have very high ideals, lead a life of chaste austerity, yet be carnally minded. For the world, the flesh, and the devil, they are but different names for these appearances of name and form, where we now find ourselves. To attribute any causal power whatsoever to these appearances is to be carnally minded. So how do we change ourselves? The cure for this way of thinking is a better application of the very thing that causes it. It is the application of the life aspect corresponding to the Hebrew letter Beth. Beth. Remember, Beth is a double Hebrew letter, life and death. Profound observation by the magician leads to accurate generalizations that become the suggestions that work through the law, symbolized by strength, to effect our liberation. Here we can draw on race memory, for it also includes a record of all correct interpretations. Yes, there's that. It's all there. When we start on the right course, our cells embodying these records of truth will be stimulated to increased activity. Concentration and the magician. This is where concentration comes in. The magician symbolizes perfect concentration. His is the power to make his mind one-pointed. Nature conceals nothing from the man who has learned how to watch. To assist you in developing concentration, I've included the orange exercise in this webinar. Try it out. You can also at some point, if you're able to, get a copy of it from my website, gatesoflight.com. Here's the orange exercise. The purpose of this exercise is to train the mind to concentrate upon a given subject for longer periods of time without allowing distracting thoughts to enter. This improves memory and comprehension. You cannot meditate without concentration. Set aside a period of time, such as early morning or before retiring, for this exercise. Whatever time is chosen, try to stick to it each day. Pick a quiet spot where you will not be disturbed. Sit quietly in a chair with a hard back and just take it easy for a few minutes, letting your thoughts slowly come to a halt. Then, looking at an orange, a real orange, not a picture of an orange, which you have placed on a stand or clear table before you at about 1.5 feet from you, examine slowly and completely the surface of the orange. Now, I will suggest, if oranges are out of season, grab a lemon or some other citrus fruit that you can get your hands on. Then, letting your eyes slowly drift to the center of the orange, look within it as if you are really looking inside the orange. Let your eyes remain constant as you look within it and examine the various segments, shapes, colors, and sizes of the pieces and the seeds within the orange. Then, after you have done this for a few minutes, examine a seed and take it down to its shell and examine its many layers. Then, looking at the seed, see how it would look placed in the ground, then sprouting, bearing roots, and finally growing to a small tree. Then a mature tree bearing a blossom, which blossoms into a fruit. You again have the orange. Let this be your exercise. If at any time during the exercise your attention drifts to another subject, stop immediately and go back to the beginning, letting your thoughts drift out and slowly stop and then begin again. Do not stop and start again more than 3 times in one setting. If focus is not kept after 3 tries, discontinue the session and try again later in the day. The completed exercise should take between 10 to 15 minutes a day. And I'll let you know that it can take you, if you try this every day for 2 weeks, it can actually take you maybe a month or 2 or 3, and then you can do this in the 10 to 15 minutes, and your mind will not wander. What also happens, though, is from this exercise, it's kind of like lifting weights and getting your muscles stronger, is that when you walk into a room, you actually see more. You don't have to think about it, you just see more. When you gaze across a room or meet people, you see more. And you get information from what you see more readily. Like anything that's an exercise, you're developing something, you're directing your subconscious mind to look, and it starts to do that. Your mind doesn't wander as much. This is incredibly important. That's why, rather than just referring you to go find it on my website, I thought it was very important to put it here. The next thing is understanding the value of sacred books. The wise recommend the reading of sacred books as a preparation for unfolding the latent powers of the spirit. See my post, Activating Kundalini, Patanjali's Kriya Yoga, on my website, here listed, concerning the importance of reading sacred books. These books are part of the memory of nature. Such excuse me, such reading is an exercise of the objective mind. So now we've been exercising the mind, the subjective mind, in using concentration, and then this is another exercise. They contain the generalizations from experience that we all need to learn. The sum total of their teaching, these sacred books, is the doctrine that the life power is a limitless unity which uses personal centers, you and me, as vehicles for self-expression. From the time that you are able to accept that doctrine, it begins to act as a suggestion to the subjective mind. It will liberate you from every form of bondage, and it will also deliver to you everything you need to fully realize that. Get to know your creator. That's another very important part of this study. So accepting this is not enough. You must also mentally identify yourself with the magician. Look at the card often. You will need to practice holding the mental attitude it implies. Throughout every day, take the time to remember who and what you really are. I make a point of blessing my food at every meal. Even when I have a snack, I say quietly to myself, thank you. You notice that's a capital S for self. Contact the Creator first. Thank your Creator for the bounty of the earth placed before you. Ask that it be blessed. Use your own words. Keep it simple. And this is between you and your Creator, your inner self. No public display is necessary. No waving of arms and the whole thing. If you're in a group of people that all like to bless their food, then yes, that's wonderful. It just confirms it even more. But what you're doing is creating patterns and practices that you're placing on your subconscious mind to fulfill this acknowledgement. By doing this, you are directing your attention inward on a regular basis throughout your day, creating a practice of acknowledging your inner self. So it's very simple. It's not so people think you're holy. It's just, and you may not even make your food really holy if it's, got food poisoning in it, though it may cure it. We'll see. But the most important thing is to begin a practice of acknowledging your inner self. Here we have the pattern on the trestle board. Repeat the affirmations on the pattern of the trestle board. I've added it at the end of this webinar. Make a copy of it for your use. The term trestle board refers to the architect's table where his designs or blueprints are placed. These affirmations help to dispel the false notion of separateness, that your life is determined by external conditions and causes. And you'll see to the right the tree of life, and the pattern on the trestle board is based on it. I call these affirmations my reset button. We're in the computer age, so yes, this really is how they work. I say them first thing in the morning and when I go to bed at night. They take maybe, I actually clocked it one time, 3 to 4 minutes to say. If you get them, and you can just repeat them by having them in front of you, or at some point you will have them memorized. But don't force yourself. Just have a piece of paper in front of you. The affirmations numbered 1 through 10, you see the tree of life on the left, relate to the 10 emanations on the tree of life. The top you see 1, the crown, Kether, 2, to the right, wisdom, 3, understanding, 4, mercy, 5, severity, 6, beauty, 7, victory, 8, splendor, and 9, foundation, and 10, kingdom. And those words are actually used in the affirmations. The first affirmation, 0, relates to the unknowable power which is everywhere behind the tree. And in Hebrew, it's called the An-Sap-Or. The roots of the tree are at the top. So it's actually pictured upside down. You may recall that up in the tarot means within. That's the source. The mistake that enslaves us is in getting cause and effect inverted in our consciousness. Causes are never external. Effects are never internal. Nothing that is outside can change your inner life. No matter how much you may seem to be affected by what happens, by what people say and do, by stellar influences, by anything else in your environment. All these things modify your vehicles, your physical and etheric bodies. But those bodies are just as much a part of your environment as your home and city parks, tables, and chairs. Causes are never external. You are the magician. Reverse the suggestion and you reverse its consequences. Watch your mental processes and you will see that your personal expression of the universal objective mode of consciousness is at all times absolutely the controlling principle. The subjective mind must carry out the instructions created by the objective mind. See yourself as the magician. Remind yourself that your personality is the instrument of that limitless life power, which works through you to manifest a particular demonstration of its power to produce beautiful results. Now you may have some understanding as to why the deceiver is called the renewing intelligence and why its attribute is mirth. Because it's a distance we have to go to fully realize this. Overcome evil with good. Remember, an error is only a half-truth. You don't have to get rid of your errors. What you have to do is to take the truth that is in them and complete your realization of it. Herein lies the teaching that you are to overcome evil with good. Here's the pattern on the trestle board. Always say before you say it, and you do want to speak this out loud, because you want to, and quietly, not loud. You're not making an announcement to the whole world. You're just speaking to your subconscious mind. This is a dialogue between you and your subconscious mind. This is the truth about the self. 0. All the power that ever was or will be is here now. 1. And remember to always say the numbers because they relate back to the tree of life. And that will start to become more apparent as you recite this over and over again. So 1, I am a center of expression for the primal will to good, which eternally creates and sustains the universe. 2, through me, its unfailing wisdom takes form in thought and word. 3, filled with understanding of its perfect law, I am guided moment by moment along the path of liberation. 4, from the exhaustless riches of its limitless substance, I draw all things needful, both spiritual and material. 5, I recognize the manifestation of undeviating justice in all the circumstances of my life. 6, in all things great and small, I see the beauty of the divine expression. 7, living from that will, supported by its unfailing wisdom and understanding, mine is the victorious life. 8, I look forward with confidence to the perfect realization of the eternal splendor of the limitless light. 9, in thought and word and deed, I rest my life from day to day upon the sure foundation of eternal being. 10, the kingdom of spirit is embodied in my flesh. When you repeat the pattern on the trestle board, in the evening, try doing it in reverse. Start at 10, then go to 9 and 8. This is you will be doing right before you go to bed. And you can just say it quietly to yourself. Other things start to happen when you do it in reverse. You start to see things differently. And remember, we were talking about inversion, and we were talking about seeing the world as upside down. See it from inside out of yourself and your inner self. So in the morning, you will read it from, always say this is the truth about the self, and then proceed to go from 0 to 10. And in the evening, you would go, this is the truth about the self, and then go from 10 to 0. Thank you for attending my webinar on bondage, the first stage of spiritual unfoldment. Please go to my website on www.gatesoflight.com for more information about the symbols and colors of the keys. I will also be posting a recording of this webinar on my website. Does anyone have a question?
No, just these affirmations, or whatever we call them, the patterns, are very powerful and beautiful.
Thank you. Yes, they are necessary. I call this my reset button. It's just like, you know, when your computer's acting up and you just go, ah, I can't deal with this anymore, and you hit reset, or you turn it off and turn it on, and then everything works again. Yeah, that's exactly how I see them, because we have so many of these old race patterns and tribal patterns in our consciousness that the only way to get rid of them is just to reset ourselves with this sort of thing, and to read books, and to daily getting, you know, even just blessing my food. I realized that's really just getting in touch with my inner self, acknowledging that the subconscious mind works. And what I've also discovered is that when you acknowledge that the subconscious mind is what's running everything, it responds to that acknowledgement even. It actually responds to that acknowledgement even better. You put 1 point of effort in, it comes back with 5 points of effort. It brings things to you that will fulfill what you really want. It's a wonderful, wonderful setup that we have been given to live through, to live on this planet Earth. So thank you, everyone. Have a good day. And the next one will be in a month.